Students, this is Mr. Yao. Today we're going to talk about 6.1, where we'll learn how to use distance formula and midpoint formula to find the midpoint and the distance between 2 points. So first, midpoint formula. If we have two random points, x1, y1, x2, y2, to find their midpoint is basically the same as finding the average between them. So we add x1 and x2 together, then divided by 2. We add y1 and y2 together, then divided by 2, just like finding the average of two numbers. As for the distance, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So let's actually draw two random points, x1, y1, and we'll have x2, y2. To find midpoint, we're basically doing, well, right here, around here. We're just adding the x1 and x2. We're kind of just, x1 is this distance right here, x2 is this distance. We're finding the average, which is right here. As for the y part, putting this is y1, this is y2, we're averaging them, so it's around here. That's what we do for the midpoint. As for the distance, we're going to use Pythagorean theorem to actually find it. So first, I'm going to make my right triangle, and these are basically just a grid. So this portion, that is x1, that is x2, which is why the bottom is basically x2 minus x1. And this vertical part is y2 minus y1. That's the difference between the y2 and the y1. And we are representing each leg, then we just square them, add them together. That's basically my a, that's my b. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And if I square root both sides, that's basically square root of a squared plus b squared, which is the distance formula. Now let's see how we actually use them to find the actual midpoint and distance. Here we're given 2 points. Let's start with finding the midpoint. We're going to add them, and we typically use letter M to represent midpoint. We're going to add the coordinates. -1 plus 3, average, so divided by 2. 2 plus -6, then divided by 2. And that is going to give us 2 over 2, 1, -4 over 2, -2. As for the distance, here's what I want to emphasize. Make sure you carry the sign with the actual numbers. So x2 is 3 minus my x1 is -1, then squared, plus -6 is y2 minus 2, then squared. Again, emphasizing on the actual negative sign right here. And this negative sign is that negative sign right there. So I still keep it. That is going to give me 4 squared plus 8 squared, which is square root of 80. If you actually forgot how to simplify that, 2, 40, 2, 20, 2, 10, 2, 5. I'm counting by pairs since I'm doing square root. That's a pair. So 2, that's another pair. That's another 2. This 5 doesn't have a pair, so stays inside. And that simplifies to be 4 square root of 5. That is example 1. Next, example 2. Same idea. M equals 6.4 plus -10.7. Just make sure you carry all the sign with them. Divided by 2. 3 plus 4 divided by 2. That is going to be -2.15, 3.5. That's the midpoint. As for the distance, square root of -10.7 minus 6.4 and squared. See, I'm carrying all the signs. I'm going to deal with the signs in the next step. Plus 4 minus 3, then squared. That actually is going to be -17.1 squared plus 1 squared. After you put in the calculator, that is going to give you 17.13. The question is asking for 2 decimal places, and that's what we get. Example 3, same idea. M, add the 2 points, -3 plus -1. See, again, I'm carrying the signs. And divided by 2. -2 plus -3 divided by 2. That is going to be -4 divided by 2, -2. -5 divided by 2, -2.5. As for the distance, square root of, let's carry the signs, -1, and I have minus, the number was -3 squared, plus -3, then I'm going to subtract, and my next number is -2 squared. See, I'm carrying the sign with all the numbers. I'm just going to write them repeatedly, and then I can deal with all the calculations in the next step. So that is going to give me -1 plus 3, so 2 squared, -3 plus 2, that is -1 squared. So I got square root of 5, exact radical. That's example 3. Example 4. Midpoint, add them together, 11.27 plus 7.8 over 2. -3.2 plus -7.23 over 2. If you simplify that, that is going to give you, even though it says round to 2 decimal places, if I get an exact answer, I don't have to round. So you can either get 9.54 or you can keep 535. And then the other number is going to be -5.215. Distance, square root of 7.8 minus 11.27 squared plus -7.23 minus -3.2 and then squared. That is going to give me -3.47 squared plus, that is going to be -7.23 plus 3.2, which is going to be -4.03 and then squared. After putting in the calculator, after rounding, that should give you 5.31. That is example 4. Next, example 5. This is slightly different. You see you're given the midpoint, but you're not given one of the points. I'm just going to call that point, since the first one, x1, y1. Then I'm going to pretend I'm still finding the midpoint, so I still set it up the normal way. My midpoint should actually be x1 plus 2. I just add all the x coordinates, average them. Then y1 plus -3 over 2. The difference is I actually know my midpoint. So that means this portion is 3. I basically have x1 plus 2 over 2 equals 3. And this portion is -1. So y1 minus 3 over 2 is -1. I have two equations to solve. I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides to get rid of the denominator. So x1 plus 2 equals 6. x1 is 4. This one, same thing, times by 2, times by 2. y1 minus 3 is -2. y1 is 1. So my A actually is going to be 4, 1. That's the coordinate for A. That's example 5. Example 6. Same idea. I have the C, but it's not fully represented, and the midpoint is given. I'm still just going to go the normal direction. So in order to find my midpoint, the two coordinates need to add together. So x minus 2 plus this -1 over 2. The other one is y plus 4 plus another 4 over 2. And that's going to be equal to this one, -5. That one equals to -1. And now it's time to solve. X minus 2 minus 1 over 2 equals -5. Y plus 4 over 2 equals -1. Same idea, multiply both sides by the 2. So I have, that's x minus 3 equals -10. So x equals -7. Times 2 times 2, that's y plus 8 equals -2. So y equals -10. Here's my coordinate for C, -7, -10. That is example 6. Example 7. We have the point A and B. We don't know the midpoint, but it's M. We're trying to find the length of AM. Two different ways. One, you can choose to find a coordinate for M, and that's going to give you 3.5 plus -1 over 2, -2 plus 2.5 over 2, which is going to be 1.25 and negative 0.25. Then you can choose to just find AM with the distance formula. That's the first method. I'm actually going to choose to use the second method. So let's think about it. If M is the midpoint, basically that means AM is going to be half of AB. That means I can choose to just find AB and then multiply by a half. And since AB are both given, I just find the distance of AB. That is going to be square root of -1 minus 3.5 squared plus 2.5 minus -2 squared. So I got square root of -4.5 squared plus 4.5 squared. After simplifying, that is going to give me 6.3. That means AM, which is half of AB, is going to be half of 6.36, which is 3.18. Let me write it out. 1/2 times 6.36, which is 3.18. That is example 7. Last one, example 8. Is asking for the length of AM again, but A is not given. However, if you think about it, since M is the midpoint, basically AM is the same as BM. So I can just choose to find BM. So the measurement of BM, I have both points. 2 minus 3 squared plus -2 minus -1 squared. So I got square root of 2 minus 3, that's 1 squared. The other one is -2 plus 1, so -1 squared. Basically, you have square root 2. If the question asks you to round, that's going to be 1.41. And since AM is the same as BM, I can say AM, the measurement of AM is basically square root of 2, or 1.41. That is example 8. That is everything for 6.1. Thank you.